Hi, everyone there. Um, First of all, I would like to thank Nicola Poloni for inviting me to this reading group on theories of matter. I'm really honored with this opportunity to show my work. Um, I would like to start my presentation by highlighting some preliminary observations that you have in your document. Um, my presentation is called Teaching Philosophy in Colonial Chile, Jesuit Manuscripts of Colegio Máximo San Miguel, 18th century. Then in your document, the first observation has an historical character because it's important to say that printing press was established in 1810 and 1811 in Chile. In fact, the first printed newspaper was called Aurora de Chile. It was in 1812. Until then, printed books were brought from Europe, which were a long trips on boats and donkey. I'm not kidding. It was a trip on donkey from Lima to Santiago. This is the reason why it's so important to understand and study the handwritten materials. Second observation has an ideological character. It's related to. Sorry? Okay, sorry. I hear something. The second observation has an ideological character. It's related to the Spanish Inquisition because this institution lasted until 1813 in South America. This institution established the Index Librorum Prohibitorum, that is to say, the forbidden books that was impossible to read. But nowadays we know that this kind of book really exists in the colonial libraries and in the Chilean libraries also. And the third observation is related to the material conditions. I mean, ink, paper, bindings. Because many of the manuscripts from Colegio Maxima San Miguel are in a very bad condition and have to be cleaned before we are able to read them. Please, Nicola, put the first slide to show an example. Can you see that? Yeah. Okay. This is to show this third observation, material conditions. In this slide, we can see an volume on metaphysics. It's from the Archivo Histórico Mercedario, or Mercedarian Historical Archive. We only know the initials of the name of the author, LPM, and it's dated from 1710. We can see how damaged is this volume. We can say that the pass of time, the humidity, and fungus cause so this kind of damage in the volumes. Please put the next slide. This is the back cover of the same volume. We can see how damaged it is. The next slide also, please. This volume is from Alonso Covarrubias, and Mercedarian friar of Santiago de Chile. It's also kept in Archivo Histórico Mercedario. It's a volume on physics. We can see the bound in parchment on the left picture, and on the right, on the right picture, we can see the handmade paper. In this case, the volume is incomplete. The first part of the course is lost, and then we have to reconstruct the contents to understand completely. Please put the next slide. It's the same volume by Alonso Covarrubias. You can see in another perspective. Please put the next slide. Okay. This volume is from Archivo Nacional Histórico, National Historic Archive. It's a work by Miguel de Viñas, a Jesuit professor in Colegio Maximo San Miguel, and it's called Scholastic Philosophy, dated in 1709. I show you this picture because most of the volumes in Archivo Nacional have new hardcovers, as you can see on the in the left picture. And in the right picture, you can see how strong was the ferrogallic ink or iron gall ink, that it was so strong that many times damaged the pages, and then it's impossible to read clearly. Please put the next slide. This one is from Franciscan Archive, Archivo Franciscano. It's called Philosophical Commentaries by Juan de Puta. This particular volume is so important because it contains the general context of the triennial course by this Franciscan friar. Fuica was born in La Serena in the north of Chile, and he was teaching in a Franciscan institution. Please put the next slide. These philosophical commentaries present topics on logics, on physics, metaphysics, on generation and corruption, and on the soul, on the anima. As a Franciscan friar, he understands and comments the Aristotelian tradition ad mentem Scotti by Duns Scoto. We can see here this particular volume has so beautiful handmade illustration, as you can see. And please put the next slide. And this volume was shaped by Fuica, and that means that maybe this material would be as such of philosophical handmade by the Franciscan order. Okay, if we go back to your document, it should be noted that the manuscripts from Colegio Máximo San Miguel were brought to Real Universidad de San Felipe in the middle of the 18th century. After that, they were sent to the National Library and then to Historical National Archive. Sorry. A few of these manuscripts remain in conventual archives. In this line of work, I would like to mention some relevant aspects related to the data systematization on Chilean colonial philosophical manuscripts. You will find more details in the bibliography at the end of your document, so I just put general remarks. First of all, Ricardo Donoso, who was the director of the National Archive, in 1937 wrote an inventory of the old repository at the Historical National Archive. He was the first scholar being interested in this particular field of philosophy. In 1953, Ismael Quiles, an Argentinian Jesuit, wrote a catalog of Recoleta Dominica library, and after him, 10 years later, Walter Hanich, a Chilean Jesuit, wrote a brief description of Dominican and Mercedarian archives, as well as the various repository in the Historical National Archive. In 1972, Walter Redmond wrote his famous work on this particular field of the philosophy. It's called Bibliography of the Philosophy in the Iberian Colonies of America. After him, in 1982, the Chilean Jesuit Fernando Storquiza wrote his Biobibliography of Philosophy in Chile from 16th century to 1980. And based on these all works, previous works that I have mentioned, in the year 2015, we have reorganized all this information and update this catalog. We wrote an article on the colonial philosophical manuscript of the National Historical Archive. We have made a complete transcription of the tables of contents and construct the biographical notes of the authors. In 2018, we wrote an article on philosophical manuscript in the Historical Archive of La Merced, and I invite you to visit the blog of the project under the direction you have in your document. There you will find different transcription of the Latin contents, translations into Spanish, and so many digitization of the work of the era. And if you will like it, you can share it. Okay. Regarding the philosophical activity in colonial Chile, it should be noted that Jesuits began teaching philosophy in Chile in 1595. Father Luis de Valdivia was the first philosophy teacher of the order. However, the oldest preserved testimony of philosophical teaching is dated from 1698. Jesuit anonymous works on physics. You can see a picture of the front cover, the handmade front cover. In any case, we can say that based on the review of conventual archives, mainly Jesuit, Mercedarian, and Franciscans, as well as National Library and Historical National Archive, we can reconstruct the philosophical curriculum of Colegio Máximo San Miguel from 1698 to 1764. More specifically, for instance, the name of professor, their courses, and their contents can be known and studied. We have also identified some anonymous works as copies of professor of Colegio Maximo San Miguel. We are going to continue now with the second part of this presentation, which is related to the books in the library of Colegio San Miguel, and that's in your document. In the second part, I would like briefly to focus on the subject of the philosophy books in the library of Colegio Maximo San Miguel. I want to show the wide range of philosophical and theological works which were available for students and lecturers. I will not read the complete list because it's in the document. I just put to show how is the different kind of works, because we find books from classic tradition, philosophical traditions, patrology, medieval philosophy, Renaissance philosophy, modern scholasticism, commentators on Aristotle, Saint Thomas Aquinas, Suarezianism, Scotism, and so many philosophical and handmade courses, among others. You can check it quietly if you are interested in. In this context, it's important to know that the vanishment of the Jesuits in 1767, different inventories of bibliographical collections and catalogs of Jesuit college libraries were done. But they did not include the city, neither the year of publication of the books. Their titles were reduced to its minimum expression, and the last name of the authors have transcriptions errors. Nonetheless, it can be said that the members of the Society of Jesus read the same authors wherever they exercise their missions, especially between 16th and 18th centuries. So, from a broad perspective, it can be said that Jesuit education is closer to Christian humanism. They had religions and spiritual formation, and also the worldly formation needed for South American and Chilean context. Accordingly to the above, it can be said that the library of Colegio Maximo San Miguel is halfway between a modern and medieval library. It held books for evangelization and humanist and scientific formation. Having said that, let's see the authors of the professors of Colegio Maximo San Miguel and their works. Please, Nicola, put the next slide. This is the first work on the 18th century of Colegio Maximo San Miguel by Manuel do Valle, who was a nephew from a famous Chilean Jesuit, Alonso do Valle. Maybe you know something about him. This particular work is on logic, physics, and metaphysics certamen, and is the testimony of the triennial course from 1705 to 1707. Yeah. Please put the next slide. We have already seen this. It's by Miguel de Viñas, who was a professor at Colegio Maximo San Miguel, and he was the first Jesuit publishing a printed book in 1707. In fact, this is the third volume that remains unpublished and remains in the Archivo Nacional Histórico. It's called scholastic philosophy, as we have seen before. Please put the next slide. This one is the work by Juan de Puta. He was professor at Colegio Maximo between 1710 and 1711. His work is Disputations on the Anima, Disputationes in Animasticam, and In Octo Libros Physicorum. We can see here the handmade front covers. In particular, this volume is so illustrated. Juan de Puta. We have seen before an anonymous work, the first picture of an anonymous work. That volume was a copy of the lectures of Juan de Puta, of this one teacher. Please put the next slide. This one is an anonymous Jesuit works on metaphysics, animastics, and on generation and corruption. And it's dated from 1715. This one is so clearly to read, and it's very have a very illustration, handmade illustration also. Okay, the next slide, please. This work is by Agustín Narvarte, who was born in Concepción in the south of Chile. His work is on the anima and metaphysics, and it's kept in the National Library, in the Chilean National Library, Biblioteca Nacional de Chile, and it's the only one that I have in this format. I don't have the picture, but this kind of image. Agustín Narvarte, he taught in Colegio Maxima San Miguel in 1722. Please put the next slide. This one is a work by Juan de Sorozábal, a Spanish Jesuit, who taught in Colegio Máximo San Miguel in 1724. This particular volume is on physics contents. This volume is so big. Okay, Juan de Sorozábal. Please put the next slide, Nicola. Okay. This next one is a work by Miguel Dureta. He taught between 1727 to 1728 in Colegio Máximo San Miguel. From him, we have his works on physics, metaphysics, and commentaries on the anima. We can see here this handmade cover, these handmade illustrations that are so beautiful. And you can check how he wrote Metaphysicam on the right picture with an H between T and A. Maybe it's an effect of the mix with Latin, with the spoken Spanish. Please put the next slide. This volume is kept in the Jesuit archive. It's by Lorenzo Romo and dated 1738. It's a work on logic. This particular volume, it's important to our research because his author, Lorenzo Romo, was a Spanish professor and a Spanish Jesuit who taught in Colegio Máximo, and he was expelled from Chile along with the Society of Jesus in 1767. In fact, he died in the middle of the sea, traveling to Imola, and his body was thrown to the sea. Please put the next slide. Here we can see how careful his works were. His works on logic, and please put the next slide. This one is by Lorenzo Romo also, but it's his work on physics. It's kept in Archivo Histórico Mercedario, and it's testimony of his thoughts in Colegio Máximo in 1739. And we can see his handmade work, handmade illustrations also. Please put the next slide. And here we can see how beautiful his work were. And please put the next slide. This one is a work by Agustín Zaragoza. He was an Spanish professor also. His work is on physics and metaphysics, and is dated from 1764 in Colegio Máximo. It's important to say because here we can see his works on physics and metaphysics, as I said. And we are to continue with the last part, because I would like to exemplify the general table of contents of the philosophical work of these two last authors, Lorenzo Romo and Agustín Zaragoza, both professors at Colegio Maxima San Miguel during the 18th century. The aim is to show how the lecturers taught the Aristotelian physics, showing a special emphasis on the study of the composition of the natural bodies and the theory of prime matter. You can find. I will not read this complete table of contents because you have it in your document, but I only put it here to show how they thought was, and maybe it can be useful for you if you are interested in this kind of matter. And that's the reason why I put it here completely. And please put the next slide, Nicola. And with this, I say thank you for your attention.